This meeting of the regular City Council meeting of March the 20th to order, please. Would you call the roll?
Coos.
Here.
Harris.
Present.
Carlson. Here. Olson. Severson.
Here.
West.
Here.
Singy.
Here. Would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is a public hearing on Resolution 142543 to amend the 2014 General Government Annual Budget. Fire Department by $80,000 and Tourism and Economic Development Department by $350,657. Is there anyone here for this public hearing? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. In terms of communications, we've got some information about the fair market appraisal for the Centennial Building. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Was there any other communication?
Nothing.
Okay. Is it on? Okay. So that brings us to persons to be heard. We do have a lot of people that have signed up to be heard tonight, so I would ask if you would keep your comments short and to the point. We would certainly appreciate it. Chuck Slagle is the first one on the list. Chuck?
All right.
There he is. You're first up, Mr. Slagle.
I'm so sorry. I was lost in the crowd out there. Everybody was wearing blue shirts. So anyway, I'm here to talk about the museum. I've talked about it last time, and I will make it short because it looks like you guys have lots of challenges. But with the museum, as far as I'm concerned, it's about planning. I had actually hoped that I was a little uncomfortable. This whole process has been kind of an uncomfortable thing for me. When you challenge the city council, it's not a fun endeavor. But I did a little bit of research when it comes to museum, and to the best of my knowledge, when you go back into the 80s and 90s, they set the goals for the museum, and since that period of time, we've spent $500,000 to $750,000 a year. I'm not sure the numbers. I've heard a couple of different things. So in the last 20 years, we've probably spent $10 million on a museum that at this point is getting 25 to 30,000 people that come in, both locals as well as guests. And what I really wanted the museum to be is an example of how we could do some planning instead of waiting until the whole building was filled with people in blue shirts, or we were dealing with a particular, the car house at the very last minute, that we took the time to actually plan ahead. And I think we have that option right now. The difference is everybody's still talking about the blasted building. And I really think that we, with $350 million or $340 million in bonds and a tax rate that's higher than any other place in the state except one or two places, that we really could just slow down and start making good decisions based on planning. With the museum, this is a little narrow niche of all the problems you guys have, but what's nice about it, it's in a position to actually take our time and make it right. That blasted building was built in '67. We don't need to rush out and build them a building. The goals for the museum were set in 1983 and 1990, before we even had cruise ships and before the internet really decided what it was going to do. We have time to sit back and say, all right, there's 7 people on the museum staff, 7 people in the middle of the winter. They have time to produce 2 or 3 papers, or 2 or 3 pieces of paper that say, this is the mission of this museum. This is what it's going to do for our kids. I have a dad, I have myself, I have a son, I have a grandson. They all live in town. I've been here. And I really would like to hand over to my kids something that's well thought out and designed, and I think that you have time to do that with the museum. You don't have to rush in and build a museum. You also don't have to rush in and give them a piece of whatever that doesn't work for them. We have time to force that organization to say, this is what the museum's going to do for us and our children 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then based on that mission, we turn around and we say, this is the building that's appropriate to that mission. I mean, when you take a look at good planning, I mean, you guys are putting fires out all the time. You don't have to do that with the museum. I mean, the staff is young. The new staff that's running the museum is young and intelligent and educated, and they're capable, if they're pushed, of creating a vision for this community. Not something that's self-centric, that's off on the side and doesn't contribute, but something that actually is, our kids will be proud of. They're capable of that if we demand it of them. What does the mission of the museum look like? But we can ask that. We don't have to ask anything less. For God's sakes, whatever it is, $500,000, $750,000 a year, we should be able to say on 3 pieces of paper, what does the museum look like 3 years from now? And then based on that, based on how they're going to contribute to our only remaining industry, the tourism, we turn around and say, okay, that's a good vision. We can get behind that. Let's build a building or rebuild an existing building that works for that. And so I know you guys got a million things to do and you're dealing with filtered and ammoniaed water and all that other stuff. But in this particular case, what's unique about the museum is we don't have to rush in, and it can be an example of good planning. We can turn around with that staff and say, tell us what it looks like. And that's something we should ask for. I'd ask for that if I was having dinner at Ocean View, for God's sakes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and this is a $750,000 budget or whatever it is. What does it look like in 5 years? All right? And then we agree on what it looks like. It contributes to our kids. It contributes to our tourism industry. Good. There's the plan.
Thank you.
Are we done?
I hope so.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Marty. I could have gone on forever.
That's how I was waiting
Any
for you to
questions?
take a breath. Are there any questions, Bob?
I like the way you think, so thank you for coming up.
Well,
It's difficult sometimes.
This is not an emergency. Let's do it right. All right.
Thank you. Ed Plute?
For the record, my name is Ed Plute, and by putting this chemical in the water, we don't even need to do this. We can have a filtration system put in very cheaply. It'll cost about $300,000 to $700,000 delivered, installed, pre-engineered. And the thing about this ammonia is, you got the plant backwards, and everybody knows this. Even the electricians that put this plant in know it was put in backwards. The UV is supposed to be first, chlorine second, and it was not put in that. If you try to inject ammonia in your system now, the way they're set up, you are in for some big troubles. And any chemist knows this, so that needs to be addressed as well. Now you got to remember that the money that's spent on this project so far, I went through and took a lot of the information down of the equipment we have, and that is standing there in place. And I can't come up with more than $5 million worth. Where is all this money? That's my very question to that. You got to realize this cruise ship industry is not going to last forever. It drops off percentages every year over periods of time, like every area it goes to. How are we going to contact our budget and control our budget if this happens? You can keep raising our taxes constantly. If you guys don't start listening to us, and I mean listening to us, it's time you go out the back door the way you came in. And that's all I got to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Amanda Mitchell?
Hi, how are you guys? Did you guys get the email today? I gave you a heads up on what I was going to talk about. Any of you receive it?
I don't believe I received.
I don't receive it.
Okay. Did any of you guys receive the email today? Just making sure that we had a few people. What I wanted to talk about today, and I sent the thing so you guys could have the links, is also some other concerns about how our system is set up. We have a KPU document that said 80% of our byproducts are produced even before the reservoir. If you guys if you guys know where our reservoir is and where we put in the ammonia, it's right before the tank. So in November of, can't remember, it was just last year, I believe, the parts per billion for the byproducts was at 146. If you take 80% of that, it's still 116 parts per billion, and it's well over the limits of the EPA. And if you look at, even if you lower that and you were to put it down, the max we could have is 75 parts per billion in the beginning. And to lower that to 80%, what I'm saying is if they inject that, then that's what it would lower it. And so we'd still be over mathematically no matter which way you put it. So I wanted to point out that, and I will resend you guys those articles so you can look at. The other thing, too, that I think that the issue is being missed is that this is not just about chlorination and adding the ammonia for disinfectant. This is about our choice to direct what we consume. And I think that there's a lot of people that have come into the issue. Some people just don't want the chemicals. And I'm asking for you guys to actually look at that. Where do you guys think? Do we have a right to choose what filtration, or do you guys just push forward with this and not let us have a choice? So I'm going to ask that you guys hold off on putting the ammonia into our water until we can find out this ballot issue. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think that I've said everything you guys already know. Also, one other thing I wanted to check with is if any of you that did receive the email checked with Randy from Poughkeepsie, New York. He was willing to talk with you about their experience with chloramines over there. Any of you?
The only email I see recently was one about the meters from you. So
That's the only one I have too.
We got something from Save Our Water, Hush Mail from Poughkeepsie, New York, operator.
Oh, you got it?
Right there. I got it,
You got
yeah.
it.
So some of you guys got it and some of you didn't.
So it wasn't from you though. It was, you're talking about the one from the Save
Save
Our
Our
Water.
Water.
It has her name at the bottom.
Okay. Then I probably have it too. You know, that this isn't something that the city council decided to do. We're being mandated by the federal government from the EPA to do this. You do know that.
Not mandated for adding ammonia. You are mandated to regulate the byproducts.
Right. Okay. No
Yeah,
question?
I just, a number of years ago, there was a bond issue and a vote that passed the voters to put the chlorination plant in and move the chlorination. It was done in a public vote, so it's not just the council. And there was other council members that aren't here now that were part of that. There was options looked at. There was input, and then they went through the process of looking at cost. They looked at our water chemistry. They hired experts. They talked to different people. And they put it out in ballot, and the voters voted for it.
As far as we have seen, and you can go onto our website, because we've been posting all the documents that we've been finding so people can look for themselves what the past history is. The only thing that we saw was a feasibility report from CHM2 Hill for the addition of ammonia, and we were offered 3 different ways. So, and a lot of people weren't even here or even legal to vote at the time. So what about for the people that weren't here? Do we not have a right? And even if I made a decision 5 years ago to say, hey, I think this is a great idea, and I did the research, why can't we change our mind at this point? You're saying that we have no right to speak now and say we have concerns. There's new information. People change their mind all the time.
You have perfect right to stand up at the podium and give us your opinion. I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm wearing a blue shirt today because I agree for safe drinking water. What we're discussing or we're in disagreement about is how we do it.
Right.
And chlorination is being used for 90 years. It's all over the United States. It's increasing in use. It's not staying stagnant. It's increasing in use to meet the federal standards. And so we're following good science. And we're not putting. I have children. I have a family in this town. I have grandchildren. If you think I'm going to put something in there that's going to harm them, it's not going to happen.
But that's your choice. We can't take what you're asking for us to do. You're putting an additional chemical in there.
Correct.
But that's forcing us to consume the chemical that you want to drink. We don't want to.
It's what our public water system is going to utilize.
So I might have the ability to go punch this guy over here. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go force my will on him. I'm saying that that's what you guys are amounting to doing to us.
No, sorry, I disagree.
Well, I don't think I have any more comments. I think that we can have the rest of the people. You have more questions?
Yeah, I don't have a question, Amanda, but I know you're sort of the leader of the group. You've been guiding people. I have and I respect what everybody's trying to do. Whether I agree with how it's going to go or not, I don't. But what I've got a problem with is the petition that you're running to try to have a vote, public vote, is the method you're conducting it. And I'm going to give you an example. In my church on Sunday, one of your people showed up after the service and tried to solicit the signatures. And with one of the congregation, they had a discussion, and basically the the congregation member said, I don't agree with you and I think you should leave. And the guy says, well, but you don't understand. All the members of the council and the mayor are on a kickback. We're taking money back, and that is a lie. If you can prove it, bring it to me and I'll fix whoever's doing it. But don't use that kind of an excuse to get a petition. Use the scientific basis you've got, and we can respect that, but I can't respect outright lies. So this is my comment, and you've got to control your people.
So you guys are the council and our elected officials. These are your people. They're not my people.
Yeah.
So
If we can limit the audience comments, please.
I don't have control over everybody, and they're entitled to their opinion. They can think that you guys are taking kickbacks. I'm not the one that's publishing that. I could think it, and I might not even voice it. But I don't have control over that, and that's not something that we're pushing.
Yeah. Everybody here works.
So now that this is open out in the forum, you know what? You express your opinion. You guys, they're not accepting this, and since I have control over you, they don't feel that. You know, there's something that Andrew Wheeler, Schiller, I'm sorry, forgot his last name, but there was Bob offered to come back up here and do an open forum. Maybe this would be something that's better addressed, that we actually have an open community forum so everybody can get this and air this out in the open instead of the little back things. Wouldn't that, I just think that maybe you guys can sponsor something so then we can do it.
We have had community forums. We have had open houses. We have had public presentations. We've had presentations here. We're going by our experts' opinion. We're going by science. You can find anything on the internet to justify any position. I mean, and some people don't think vaccinations are good. And so they're not letting people get immunized. We're not forcing people to be immunized, but we are responsible for the water. And we have to change it. And you talk about the fact that there's this other solution. Well, the water's too cold to use that granulated activated carbon.
Did you know that if we
don't...
don't...
a water filtration plant that the estimate is up to $50 million to build. This science has been proven. It is used across the country. 1 in 5 people in this country drink chlorinated water. It's used in New York City and in Portland, Oregon, and in Denver and in San Francisco. It's not some new technology that we just whooped up.
What does that have to do with an open forum? Why can't we have a word? It seems like even if we didn't know back in the day and it wasn't very much interest and you guys have it open, we obviously have a very large crowd and a very concerned populace here. Why not have an open forum now? Why not open it up?
Because when you make a decision, sometimes the decision is made. We have built this this plant, but based on a vote that we had years ago. We've been working on this for 10 years. It's not just something we don't know anything about.
10 years, a lot can be learned. And a lot of people, you know, I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago, and I'm sure that you're not. And technology's changed. We have new information. And there's obviously a lot of concern in our town. Why can't we have this addressed openly?
Does anybody have a question or a comment for
Only
Ms.
one.
Mitchell?
You had an open forum, and half of us are better attended.
we're talking about having so everybody discuss. So Bob had it. I didn't see you guys up there expressing the concerns. I see you directing them at me and then saying, I'm not an expert in this and I'm not qualified to look on the internet to get my information. So you guys are automatically disqualifying my opinion and any of those in the crowd that looked on the internet because we're not experts. Why not call the experts in and have an open forum so then we can discuss this?
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Karen Nelson.
I'm going to speak to the water issue too.
Oh, excuse me. If you could just give your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Karen Nelson. And I just wanted to say that I feel like that the EPA is doing a blanket thing for the United States, and I feel like that it's kind of like Big Brother telling Alaska what to do again. I mean, we are a very unique state where we have unique needs. We're not like Las Vegas or LA or New York with large populations. We're a small populated area here, and so I just feel that we have different needs and that we should consider not having this chloramine because and like you said, there's a lot of information on the internet, but one, I would like to quote just something briefly about the information. It says that chloramine, the water contains water when water contains chloramine, which is a standard disinfectant for municipal drinking water. It is added to water to kill bacteria, but it is also toxic to fish. Chloramines remain chemically stable in water from hours to days, and they are highly toxic to fish and other organisms which live in the water. And so I just feel like we have, that we have some of the cleanest water in the United States here in Alaska, and I feel that we should definitely look at a different method or reject this, especially a community which makes a very high percentage of their living off of salmon and fish with our commercial fishing industry, our tourism, which purchases salmon and is highly coveted. That's just my strong feelings.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Ms. Nelson? Bob?
Do you put chlorinated water into goldfish? You don't. The chlorine is just as harmful as this. The chloramine is no more harmful than the actual chlorine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Monreen. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Can I
Yes.
something happened to our audio and we're not broadcasting?
Oh, okay. Okay, we are going to stand down for a few minutes so we can correct the audio so that people that are watching on television can hear. So I gavelled down the... Great.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
gavel
gavel down
here
so
next
hard.
time. I guess not. I know. Silence everything.
Does it sound something loose?
I guess, yeah. Something happened.
You getting anything?
And that was it? I knocked it out, huh?
Way to go, Marty.
I must have hit just the right spot. Thanks, Ed.
Can we go home?
Oh, I guess still. Let's go to Hawaii. It was close.
Very good job. Keep them calm. Compared to what I would say.
Everything was.
I mean, that naturally.
I know, I didn't think that. Right.
What did you do today, Piggy?
You feel what?
Sorry. Which place? Right here.
Carlos's wife, Danielle.
Okay, I'll eat yours then.
That's taking one for the team.
He did call in. I think he did. I think Matt called in, didn't he?
I heard
Oh, I thought she answered the phone.
Not so too, but I don't.
Oh, okay. Where's Lou? Hawaii, I think. That's where Matt is too.
Well, they didn't invite us, did they?
I know they didn't. How are we doing? Are you talking to somebody that's seen if the wine goes away? I'm sorry. Who knew? It must have just the right spot.
We never get no more money.
Hey, Lynn. I've got it. I've got your name. Yeah, they brought it in.
Floats in the water.
Hey, Matt. We're standing down while we fix the communication system.
Okay.
Did you say we're having a presentation?
No, we're not. We're having a problem with the microphones.
Already killed it.
So we're fixing. Yeah, I banged it into oblivion apparently.
Thanks.
So they can't hear it on television. So they're fixing that.
Sorry. There's
Okay.
three other people talking.
We're gonna have a big presentation.
I need to get the other people quiet. Nope. No. Is it really bad?
She can hear people.
It's just a hum. Real bad hum?
It's a whine. It's like a high pitched whine. But she said you can hear people talking and everything, so she's gonna have to be the way it is.
Apologize for it.
Yeah. I'm going to gavel over here. We're going to come back into session. Apologize to the people who are watching on television. Apparently there's a hum in the line and we're unable to fix it right now. Sharon Monreen, sorry I had to get you to sit back down, but now it is your turn.
My name is Sharon Monreen. I'll tell you where I live. You all know anyway. First of all, I want to say thank you all for being here. And I do not think that, I don't point blame. I think that I know that there were meetings before. I was not able to attend them. I even remember 3 years ago I tried to with my husband. A lot of people know I have a medical situation there, and I wasn't able to get to the meetings, but they were there, and sadly I know that there probably wasn't enough input to help you make your decisions or so that people knew about it. But I am at a point now where I am learning some more about it, and I really am not happy about putting more chemicals in the water. So even though we are at this late date, I would hope that you either could consider stopping it now to see if we could vote as a community to do a different way. My understanding so far of what I'm learning is that there is a way to remove our halitoids or halics, whatever it is that we get that little letter every month, as to actually just more or less covering them up with the chloramine, and that eventually that will build up the chloramine. And my understanding is that one way to do that, they call it a chloramine burnout, I think, and then you have to release things in the water and clean it all out, which it doesn't dissipate, it goes into our water out here and builds up. So I'm just thinking that even though the decision was made, I would like to see it addressed more, and I would like to see more community coming out, not just for this, but regularly coming to it and learning about it and making a decision to support you. I feel like that probably the information before with a small amount of people was made more on a dollar amount than on a choice as to whether I would prefer to pay more and have the byproducts removed as opposed to adding more chemicals. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to say thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Marie? Thanks, Sharon. Perry Allen.
Hi guys, my name is Perry Allen. I'm the GCI Systems Manager here in Ketchikan. Just want to speak a couple of minutes on some advertising issues that we've noticed from KPU Telecommunications. Feel this kind of misleading the public. So I'd like to start off with as early as today on the radio, Mr. Warren, Technology Report, there was a statement made that only KPU offers Seattle channels. That's clearly not true. GCI as well offers those channels. As well as a couple of weeks ago, there was a statement made during that same technology report that only KPU has fiber. Again, not true. GCI already has fiber to every neighborhood, as well as fiber feeding Ketchikan to the rest of the world. So I did contact Mr. Lawrence today, find out where he got his information from. He informed me that he gets that from KPU's marketing department. That's how he builds those reports. So over the past 6 months that I've been here, just go back a couple of months here. Back in November, KPU launched their 55 meg internet service. It was put out there as introducing the fastest internet speeds in Alaska. That's simply not true. MTA in the Valley had the fastest internet in Alaska, the 75 meg speed. They currently still offer that. Even after GCI launched their 100 meg internet speed for the past couple of months after this, KPU continued to leave their signs up that said introducing and having the fastest internet speeds in Alaska. Not only in the mall location, but also on their Facebook pages. So, again, very misleading to the public. Currently, right now, they have an A board in front of their door. On that A board, KPU states they have the fiber optic advantage. I think that could be argued that GCI has a fiber that connects Ketchikan to the rest of the world. We actually sell a portion of that fiber to KPU for their connectivity. So I don't know if that's an advantage or not. Secondly, we got some misquotes on some of our pricing. On their A board, they quote an $80.55 price point. That is a GCI price point. They say it's 166 channels, when in truth it's over 230 channels, plus some high definition and DVR included in that price. More so, they say we're Anchorage based and focused. Anchorage based maybe, Anchorage focused not so much. GCI has 11 full-time employees that live, work, raise families in this community. We're currently hiring 2 more full-time positions. We've spent over $60 million in Southeast Alaska to bring technology to these small communities to offer competition. So to say we're focused on Anchorage, I think is very misleading. So in parting, I would just say, in my opinion, the city's job would be to enhance commerce, inspire growth, and encourage businesses to come to Ketchikan. KPU has taken upon themselves to offer some very misleading advertising out there and discouraging against just that.
Thanks, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Amelon, if you could convey his concerns.
Councilmember West, the concerns raised by Mr. Allen were communicated to my office today. I have drafted a response to those concerns, and that will be shared with Mr. Allen and the council tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Lonnie Duncan?
Hello, and thank you. I'm Lonnie Duncan. I live at 636 Schoenbar Road. I'm addressing the chloramine issue. I took part in the vote, and it was in 2003, I believe. And at that time, it was my understanding that the chloramines were a less intrusive process for the disinfection of the drinking water. And like the previous lady stated, times continues rolling on, and we learn new things every day. There are studies and reports, both by the American Chemical Society and let's see, there's another one here. S.C. Richardson and M.J. Wagner, stating the chloramines they're showing to be connected to DNA cell mutations and microbial intestine problems. The recent research, and I've done most of the research online, but the documents that I've seen have shown people in Vermont and Virginia suffering from skin rashes from taking baths in water that has been recently chlorinated by their utility. My wife suffers from end-stage renal failure. We do home hemo-kidney dialysis. I've already contacted the manufacturer of the dialysis machine, and they've told me that if the chloramine addition continues, I will have to upgrade to a different filter system for the making of the dialysate for my wife's kidney dialysis. And she does that 6 days a week. I realize that the City Council needs to comply with rules and regulations, and EPA rules they have the weight of being able to fine the city a lot of money every day. But I would ask that the council please consider trying to get some more extension and do some more research into alternatives to chlorination. I realize that most other things are really expensive, but how can you put an expense on a person overcome by inhalation vapors when they're running their bath, having to go to the hospital ER? There's also studies that have shown chlorination is possibly linked to birth defects and child misdevelopment, leading to ADA and ADD and reproductive mutation. I realize again that what we voted on at the time was in effect a dollar amount answer to a problem that has continued to grow. But please, for the sake of our children and our grandchildren, can we not reconsider and possibly select a different process? Do you have any questions?
I do have a comment. I also saw those pictures of the rashes and stuff, and I use the same internet you do. I got online, went to the Vermont Department of Ecology. At the time, there was a number of areas in Vermont that had changed the chlorination along with areas in San Francisco. 2.5 million people. They had 100 complaints. The Vermont Department of Ecology looked into them, and they called in the CDC to look at them. Out of the 100, they found that most of them were pre-existing conditions that weren't caused by the chemicals in the water, and they had one that they could potentially, but weren't sure, contribute to maybe an allergy to So, and these are the organizations that are supposed to look into this stuff.
Yes.
And that's what they got out of that. And both the Vermont Department of Ecology and the CDC said that there was no other research necessary because they did go through all these cases and look at them. Most of them were self-diagnosed and not medically diagnosed. So, that would be
Okay,
a shame to have.
I must have missed that part, okay.
So, but I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dunn? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Jim Fowler?
Evening. My name is Jim Fowler. I live at 519 Buren. And thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to come up here and speak to you. And I'm going to talk about water, but I have a little different take, and it's just an observation. It's not so much to me about whether we're putting chloramines in the water or what we're doing. I understand that we have a difficult situation. I understand that you've been tasked with the job of bringing us into compliance with EPA. My concern is not that we are doing it or how we're doing it, but what we're doing it. It seems that what we're implementing is an adequate solution that just gets us past the threshold of compliance. That's good for this year, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the road. What is this going to be like in 40 years or 50 years? EPA is not a static entity. It's not like because you're meeting, we're in compliance 3 years down the road that we're going to be in compliance 10 years down the road. When I look around at this town, I look at what we do and the way we address other opportunities, like with the hospital. At a $78 million renovation going on the hospital, I can guarantee you we're not putting in a barely adequate surgery. We build a brand new library. We didn't build a barely adequate library. We built a very nice library. We put in a new fire station. We didn't build a barely adequate fire station. We built a state-of-the-art fire station designed to meet the needs of this community going forward for 30, 40, 50 years. So why, when it comes to water, are we just being barely adequate? I think we need to look long-term at not just meeting the EPA standards that are current, but looking down the road for the next few decades and saying, where's this going? And maybe we're better served spending our resources up front addressing the situation for the long term than just being adequate in the short term. And that's all I've got to say.
Can I have any questions?
I'll answer any questions.
Can I have one? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Misty Archibald.
Misty Archibald. I reside at 332 Madison Street. I'm also here to address the water, to encourage you not to move forward with the chloramine. I didn't want to just listen to what I was told in a forum or to believe what I read in the paper, so I went and did my own research. I went to an academic database full of millions of peer-reviewed journal articles, and I did a date search, 1989 to 2004. I was able to find 108 articles on chloramine, many of which addressed the potential health effects of adding chloramine to the water. Between 2004 and the present time, there have been additional 800, just in one database, many of which address potential health concerns. So I want to talk about the science of this. When this was approved, it just wasn't known. There wasn't enough information. And I realized at the time, I know that it has been said that where was all the concern at the time? Well, at the time, the information wasn't available. People acted on information that was available, and I want to let you know that you have the opportunity now to act on the additional information that's available. People elect you guys because they believe you're folks of good character and that you're going to do what's best for the community. I don't think that anything was dropped. I don't think that a ball was dropped way back when. I think we just learned new things. 2003 and 2004, Washington, D.C. converted to a chloramine system, and lead started leaching out of their pipes. That community had to replace all the pipes in 1,016 homes for folks that were identified as sensitive to the additional lead because the levels got up to a level of concern. So they replaced pipes in houses with children under 6, houses with pregnant and nursing women, elders with autoimmune deficiencies. In 2006 in Nebraska, a hotel swimming pool, 25 kids were swimming in. They all got sick. One went to the intensive care unit with respiratory disease. Chloramine has been linked to ocular disease. It's been linked to respiratory disease, to rashes. So I think there's enough information now that we should really take a good look at that before we move forward with this. I would be happy to send you guys the research that I found. I just want to let you know that I don't want to wake up in the morning and look at my faucet and wonder, is it safe to drink that? I don't want to take an opportunity to sign my kids up for swim lessons and wonder, is that a good idea? So I just want you to know that I don't want you to do this.
Any questions? Thank you for coming. Joel Jackson.
Joel Jackson, 127 Martin Buggy Road. I'm here on behalf of Gateway Center for Human Services Aquila. Rosalie Nadeau, Ruth Bullock, and Courtney Kitiona are here from Anchorage. Ruth from Ketchikan. We're just available if there's questions later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ken Tonjes?
Good evening. Ken Tonjes, 4650B South Tongass. I am here as the Chief Administrative Officer of Peace Health Ketchikan Medical Center, also for the Car House relocation agenda item, and if the council has any questions regarding Peace Health, I'm here to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Constable?
My name is Betty Constable, 2611 2nd Avenue. I don't have any facts or anything to share with you tonight that some of these other wonderful people have done already. I only come before you tonight to share with you, if you chloraminate the water, what this is going to do to my husband and I. I really enjoy a good hot shower in the morning, don't you? But if you do this to my water, I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. Maybe you think I'm just being fearful and not looking at the facts, but all I can tell you is this is the way I feel. From the research that I've done, and that this is the way I feel. We've already put a little thing on our shower that will allow me to turn it off. So I can get in and I can wet down and I can turn it off. And I can soap down and I can shampoo my hair and I can turn it back on and rinse off and turn it off. That's how I'm going to have to take my showers now if you put chloramine in the water. I'm going to have to also get out of the shower and wrap a towel around myself and quickly get out of the room to another room to get dressed, because I can't breathe in the fumes from that water. It will damage me. It will hurt me. My husband and I enjoy eating out, don't we all? About once a week we try to go out and have dinner or breakfast or something. We're not going to be able to do that anymore if you put chloramine in our water, because the restaurants will serve me that water. They will cook my food with that water. They will wash their dishes in that water. And I don't feel like I can expose myself to that. Now, in our own home, we have now purchased a whole house filter. And supposedly, it's going to take a lot of the chloramine out. And it's going to take the chlorine out. and a lot of other stuff out. So when I'm at home, I'm going to be a lot safer. But when I go out of my home and out into the city, I have to face whatever you've done with the water. I won't be able to use the pool. I went to them and asked them, are you going to superchlorinate the water? Because if they superchlorinate the water, they'll take care of some of that. But they said that that isn't what they're going to do. They have filters and they think their filters are going to be enough. But I don't know if it will, so I won't be using the pool anymore. And I know that there's going to be plumbing problems at my house. My husband works for Madison Hardware, and the other day there was a plumber in, and he talked to him and he said, in 6 months, we are going to be so busy. So I say to you, 6 months down the road, maybe you'll be having problems with your plumbing too, I don't know. But the city will have to face that too, right? With the library, with the pool, with the fire stations, the city will have to fix that plumbing. If indeed we have plumbing problems from this, and from everything I've studied, it says that you will indeed have that. My husband and I live on Social Security. We're at that age. We probably don't have money to fix our plumbing. It's going to be hard for us to live that way. Right now, we've got a couple garbage cans sitting out in the yard collecting rainwater. I'm going to water my garden with that, rather than with your water with chloramines in it, because I don't know that I can trust that to go on my garden. So I'm sorry, but that's all I have tonight to share with you. It's just what this is going to do to me. And I think it probably will affect many other people the very same way. They won't eat out anymore either. They'll have trouble taking showers. You know, we really trust you. I know that if there's a way, you will find it. Maybe you can find another way to do this without adding this ammonia to our water. I can't tell you what that is. I don't know. Maybe you know a lot better than I do. But surely there's some way we can fix our water. I know the halocetic levels, acid levels, are too high in our water right now. I know that. We have to bring that down. From everything I've studied, it looks like if we could just take the organic matter out of the water first and then chlorinate it, we would have perfect water. But how to get those organic matter out, that's what you have to come up with, I know. But please, look into your hearts, please, and maybe find another way to do this. Any questions?
Thank you. Hannah Remiski?
Thank you. My name is Hannah Remiski. I live at 428 Tower Road. Several years ago, I came to the first meeting about chloramine. Mr. Amelon presented a company, the Hill Company, Yada Yada Hill, who came out and gave the presentation. At that time, Mr. Amelon said that a water filtration plant would cost $42 to $44 million. That was the only alternative I heard. When I went back to work the next day, I said something to Bill Goodale about, what about this water stuff? And he said, well, you know, in the 80s, the feds came through and said, we will give you a grant, Metlakatla, Prince of Wales, Ketchikan, and we will give you a water filtration plant. Bill was on the KPU board. It came to the city council, and the city council said, there's nothing wrong with our stinking water. We don't need this. We don't want to maintain it. We will not take the grant. So I was pretty tuned up about that because I thought, wow, we could have solved sort of, this problem quite a long time ago. But as many people have said tonight, things changed. There were about 10 people in the audience that night. The young lady, I read the article in the paper today and I was disturbed by the expert because the people who are providing this system to you, the young lady talked about the haloacetic acid. She talked about the ammonia. It was first anybody had really heard of this. We knew nothing about this. And like I said, there were very few people in the audience. She said, this is going to cause an increase in lead in your community. Now, before 1987, there was no ban on lead in solder. So the argument that this man made in the paper today, the expert, about lead being negligible, maybe someone else can answer this question to the exact science, but I'm going to guess that 2/3 of the houses in this community were built before 1987. And so what she said was, it's going to leach lead at a level above what the DEC says is safe. And I asked the question at the end of the meeting. I said, so what I'm hearing is the community's choices are, we will either all die of cancer from haloacetic acids, or our children are all going to be stupid because they're drinking lead. And she said, no, that's not at all what I said. And I said, I apologize, what did you say? And she said, well, the lead will be well above what the DEC says is safe. Okay, I guess that's different somehow. So that was discussed, and then she talked about the plumbing issues, and that this is going to destroy rubber in your community. Now, these are the people who are selling this to you. This is not somebody who is, you know, off in Never Never Land here. So I went back and I looked at some issues on a lot of things, Fernco couplings, all those kinds of things are rubber. You've got some that are made of neoprene, and you have some that are the new synthetic rubber. But if you look online, the jury is still out as to whether synthetic rubber will withstand chloramine. And I called the shark bite people, and they said they would have to have exactly our dose of chloramine to find out if this is safe. So many people tonight have talked about what they're concerned about, and I guess the concern is the next meeting that the city advertised, I went to. It was up at the Civic Center. I was the only citizen who showed up. Nobody knew about it. I called Marty West at home and at work and asked her to call me back. I had questions. I did not hear from her. Mr. Sievertson, when he got on the city council, I brought this up to him in my workplace, and he said he would go home and research it. Having been an elected official, I know that it is frustrating because you present at your meetings information, and you present it again, and maybe you have a workshop or whatever. The vast majority of the public goes to work, takes care of their kids, goes home, and assumes you're doing your job. And until you get to the deadline of something happening, no matter what that issue is, and people realize what it is, they come out of the woodwork. But that's what you signed up for when you ran for public office. And so the problem here is you have people who are scared to death. And they're those people. I don't represent them, but they are frightened. They're afraid to bathe their children in this water. They're afraid for their kids to be in the pool. They're worried that they're going to have property damage that they can't afford to repair. And I guess one of my questions that I'd like you to address when you discuss this is, what were the other options presented to you? Because I did not hear any option other than it was going to be very expensive to have a water filtration plant. Maybe Mr. Amelon gave you other options like this air jet thing or pre-filtering the water. The big concern, and I've heard it from some people who aren't here tonight, when asked last week, or when Mr. Bob was here, why this was picked, the answer given to a coworker of mine was, we've been screwing around with this for 10 years, and this was the most cost-efficient way to deal with it. Well, as someone has just said, we didn't go for the most cost-efficient when we built a $42 million high school for 600 kids. We didn't do that with the library and the whole, I'm not going to repeat all of that, you already know all of that. And I think it's become confrontational, us versus them. They don't trust your judgment, therefore everybody kind of goes to their corners and backs up. But I think these people need to be reassured that you picked the best system, not the cheapest system. And I don't think that has been conveyed to the public. In your paper today, Mr. Amelon has given you 30 names for a 7-member committee to discuss what you're going to do about a museum. You had committees that met forever on what are you going to do about the new library and what is your input. You've had committees when you build schools who ask, these are all your options, what does the community think is good? And so I think these people feel they were left out of the process. And I don't know if there's some way that you can convey to them with actual facts why pre-filter won't work. I mean, this is the forum you need. Why this won't work. Maybe you need a different expert than the guy who's selling you the chloramine, though. I mean, you know, they have a... That was their decision. And I'd also like to know who decided that was the decision to be presented to the city council that night. I mean, who chose that over anything else? Because I don't think I know, and I don't think any of these people know. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Rodney, Dial?
Rodney Dial, 618 Water Street. I cut my notes down because I know you guys have a lot of people here. I'll put the rest of them on Sit News. I read in the paper today that I was being suggested as a possible member of the museum committee. If that becomes the case, I would be interested in that. I'm interested because somebody needs to represent the will of the majority of citizens who I expect will not get a say in this matter. They won't have a say because, you know, they won't approve millions in new debt for something most have never been to more than once in their life in a city environment of ever-increasing debt and taxes. If you do not give the public the opportunity to vote on this project after the committee makes the recommendation, you're intentionally disrespecting their will and in essence saying that they're not intelligent enough to make the right decision. Let's be clear about what is taking place. You're about to form a committee with supporters outnumbering critics by at least 6-1. Just like with the pool committee, a museum committee will almost certainly pick the most expensive option of complete replacement, estimated at $9.5 million, which we all know will become somewhere between $10 to $15 million by the time all the change fees and unexpected expenses are involved. I'd ask that you remember Schoenbar. The committee will make its recommendation to the city council, who will go, well, golly gee, the committee says let's build a new museum, or no one will want to live in Ketchikan, our history will be lost, tourists will be sad, and of course the nuclear option of all justifications of spending is for the kids. The only thing for the kids anymore is all the debt we're leaving them. And when the committee makes the recommendation, the city council feel that they have political cover, which is the real purpose of the museum committee. You're still recovering from the rain gauge project, likely to get hammered by the voters over your plan to disinfect the water with ammonia, and failure to do any background research on members you appoint to the council. You'll use the committee's recommendations and direct Carl Amelon to miraculously find $10 million just lying around. So somewhere around October to November, you can direct the city manager to build this project by some convoluted manner to avoid bonding because you know it'll never pass. Then, of course, as par for the course, February 2015 will come around and we'll be told once again we need another tax increase or the world will end. The museum is about history, and history shows us that when the public was asked to vote on a similar sized bond, the renovation of the White Cliff building, for a senior center and performing arts center, they said no by a 2-to-1 margin. You need to ask yourself, do you respect the voice of your citizens? We're 11 days from a sales tax increase that will increase the cost of living for every citizen on this island. We were told that the tax increase was needed for dire reasons to prevent fiscal Armageddon for Ketchikan. That was about a month ago. Less than 2 weeks after you increased our taxes for the 3rd year in a row, city manager is quoted in the paper as saying that he can fund a new museum through the city annual operating budget instead of a voter-approved bond. The tax increase hasn't even started yet, and we found $10 million. Also in the paper today, city manager found another $300,000 to give to the car house to relocate the community drunk tank. He's willing to give $300,000 even though he wrote, and this is a quote from the paper today, Ms. Naidoo's comments, and she's the CEO in charge of the car house, give me little confidence that the agency has any plan in place. If that were not bad enough, Car House is unwilling to even look into a loan for the project. They want the city to fund the entire $747,000 relocation cost. And why should they look for a loan? we don't have enough money, you'll just raise taxes again. I must have missed the public notice where you told the citizens who voted on the hospital expansion that the city would be asked to cough up $750,000 to relocate the car house due to the expansion. My point is this: if we have $10 million for the museum and $300,000 to $750,000 for the car house, that means only one of two things from the members of this assembly. One, you misrepresented the need for a sales tax increase, or you voted to increase the sales tax not realizing what the budget was before you voted. You've had your buying spree and tax increases for years. Now is not the time to go $10 million more in debt. I mentioned in a letter a few years back about turning the old fire station into a small seasonal museum. Sell the Centennial building, put the artifacts in storage, start a building fund. Take your current operating expenses, which are about $500,000 a year, dedicate that to the building fund. Supporters of the museum can start a Friends of the Museum group, supplement the building fund. Work with the borough to use CST funds, and after a few years you can build a modest museum in the old fire station building or some other location, but no additional fiscal impact to the citizens. Might mean that you need to lay off a few museum workers, but occasionally you need to make the hard decisions that are in the best interest of all citizens. In closing, I would be willing to work on the museum committee and would keep an open mind, even though I'm suspicious to the reasons that you are forming this committee. I'm also asking now that you have the revelation that your city manager has found millions of dollars of excess in the yearly budgets for the museum and the car house, that you rescind the sales tax increase. And you know, and I put something else here, but now that I'm thinking about this water issue, you might need that $10 million for a water treatment plant. So it's time we start focusing on the necessities, not the niceties. And you know, as has been said, we've got the this really nice library, really nice fire station. You know, we didn't have to build a viewing place in the fire station to put an artifact in there. You know, we didn't have to put imported tile from India on the library. When you do these things, you take away money from the necessities, the things that we have to have done in this community. And there's so many things that we don't know what might break and what might need to be replaced and what building might need to be fixed. And if we go back just a couple of years ago when we needed the bridges in this town repaired, we were told once again we needed a sales tax increase for that. We are number 2 in sales tax in the entire state of over 300 communities. The only other place that's higher is Wrangell right now, and Wrangell has a lower property tax. It is very hard for businesses to compete in this island, and our young people can't afford to live here right now because we are buying everything, and we're not considering their future, and we need to when we do these projects. Thank you.
Frankie Urquhart.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Frankie Urquhart, and I live at 122 Dogwood Place. From my address, you can probably infer that I am not a city resident. So why is a borough resident showing up to a city council meeting? The answer is because I'm against the city adding chloramines to the city water. Even though my family and I are borough residents, we will be exposed to chloramines in the following ways. All the food in the restaurants that we eat at in town will be prepared using water containing chloramines. Chloramines cannot be boiled out of the water and cannot be filtered out with a simple Brita filter. Any food we consume, whether it is at the restaurant, through the Safeway deli, or even school lunches, will contain chloramine. Speaking of school, 3 of my children attend school in town and will be drinking and washing their hands in water containing chloramine. My 4th child attends daycare in town and will be drinking juice and eating foods prepared using the same water. All of my children enjoy swimming at the swimming pool at the rec center, and they will be swimming and showering in chloraminated water. So you can see, even though I'm a borough resident, adding chloramines to the city water supply is a concern for me, my family, and every other resident of this island. I have done my own reading on chloramine. From everything that I've read, I am convinced that adding chloramine to our water supply is likely to have a negative impact on the health of our community as a whole. There are a number of alternatives that the city could consider instead of adding chloramines when determining how to treat our water, one of which is filtration. Filtering out the organic material in our water before it reaches the chlorine system we currently have in place would alleviate many of the harmful byproducts we will be trying to remove by adding chloramines. I also find it troubling that the majority of the information that this community is receiving about chloramines is through the Ketchikan Daily News, which is only reported on one side of this issue. The articles in the paper seem to be more focused on disputing Bob Bocock and the facts that he presented than presenting the pros and cons of chloramines. If the City Council is seriously considering adding this chemical to our water supply, whose byproducts are known carcinogens, shouldn't the City Council present us with all the facts directly so we can make an educated decision? I know that the residents of this community would appreciate seeing the City Council present both sides of this issue beyond what they may be reading in a privately owned newspaper. I find it very disheartening that recently, when citizens have come before the City Council to voice their concerns about the city adding chloramines to our water supply, the response is that this project has been in the works for 10 years and that we all should have spoken up before now. I actually remember back in 2010 when people did start to speak up about this issue. I even remember getting a flyer in the mail from KPU stating that there would be a meeting for residents to attend in which we would be able to ask questions about chloramine. I was prepared to attend this meeting when about 2 days before the meeting, I received another flyer in the mail stating that the meeting was canceled and would be rescheduled. I am still waiting for that meeting to be rescheduled. So if council members continue to say that we've said nothing against this project for the past 10 years, then I will say that citizens have had concerns about the use of chloramines for the past 4 of those 10 years since 2010. But even if we only spoke up about this issue 2 weeks ago, this is our drinking water and should be considered important enough to talk about at any time, regardless of how much money the City Council has already invested. There is no such thing as speak now or forever hold your peace when it comes to the health of our community. This community should be able to trust that the City Council will make decisions about our city that will be good for all of its residents, including decisions regarding how we will treat our water. This is an issue we should all be able to stand together on. I'm hoping we can still do this. As you have listened to person after person express their concerns about adding chloramine to our water supply, I hope that you will take all these comments seriously and consider how we can come up with a solution to our water issues that all of us can live with. So here I am, speaking up now, and I hope you are listening. I do not want chloramine added to our city water supply. Thank you very much.
Jerry Davis.
Hi, my name is Jerry Davis, and I live at 544 Washington Street, and I'm also here because I do not want chloramine added to my family's water. I've researched chloramine as well and found that the potential health effects are not acceptable to me. And so then I looked into researching how much it would cost to purchase a whole house water filter for my home. And it would cost about $2,000. And I don't think that it's appropriate that the individual citizen should have to retrofit their house in order to avoid a chemical that's being added that they don't want anyway. In my life, in my son's life, I try to avoid chemicals as much as possible. I am careful about the kind of laundry detergent I use, the kind of cleaning agents I use. I do not do drugs or alcohol, take prescription medications, or even over-the-counter medications. I buy organic food as much as possible. I certainly do not want chemicals added to the most basic of things, my water. Please do not add chloramine to our drinking water.
Thomas Fisher? Thomas Fisher? Okay, thank you.
Sounds like a very entertaining subject here tonight. I'm Tom Fisher, and I am a resident of Ketchikan, and I'm most concerned about what seems to be happening. I kind of consider myself first line a naturalist. And at some point I have not heard anything from anybody, scientifically or otherwise, as to what's going to happen to the water when it goes through and ends up in the waterworks down here and ends up in this pristine ocean we have down here. I haven't heard anything about that. But I do know, and I can tell you a little bit that I do know, is that the currents run up and down here, and the sewage flushing will actually be in a styration that will probably migrate and probably find a harbor down there in Ward Cove, and maybe somewhere the other direction. I do know that there are fish, when they're young, mature next to the shore. And as they mature, they migrate out into deeper water. That means you're going to have to cross this death zone that's going to be out there. You in your own printing it says this stuff will kill fish. Thank you for warning me that I won't have to put it in with my guppies. That's a simple matter to deal with. Is anyone here conscious about being a caretaker of this earth? I hope so. And being a caretaker of this earth means also being a fellow keeper of my brothers. I speak for myself first, and I speak for you, and I speak for each one of us here. Wake up! Wake up! I live in a world that's gone mad. Is the city here actually gone mad too? Now, somebody was questioning about science, real science. I've had a few classes in statistical analysis. I've gone through some of the printings that are supposedly the public information that's up on the city's site. I have not seen very much there I would actually call scientific. Opinions, yes. Quoting rubber stamping EPA, yes. But the real truth is that the EPA is not God. The EPA on this particular problem only knows a small fraction of what the potential is if you dump chloramine in the water. I would just as soon go out here and drink from a stream where the only thing I've got to deal with is maybe an occasional dead trout or a deer turd. But when it comes down to the stuff you want to buy from China, because that's where I understand the primary source of all of this stuff comes from, no thank you. No thank you. I do not care for your cup of tea. Now, let's get down to some science. Now, there's a fellow by the name of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who in 2010, anybody know who Brzezinski is? He's buddy with the CFR people. And he happened to be giving a speech in 2010 in Montreal. And in there, he basically, two main parts of that speech. It's a good one. Go listen to it. It's on the web. I think you had some problem with what's on the web. But Brzezinski's on the web, too. And on there, he basically was saying to these people that are supposed to be the astute elite of our leaders of all these countries, he's telling them that there's been a change, and significant change, is that the money center is no longer in the West, but it's headed east. That was issue number one in that speech. Issue number two that he brought to the top was that for the first time in all of human history, mankind is a politically awakened. That's a total new reality. It has not been so for most of human history, quote. And this man talks to queens and kings and the royalty of the earth and the one or 10 gods that are all over the place. Now let's get down to some science here. Okay, I'm going to do a simple little reading from one of your publications that's up on the city, and under the information about chloramine in drinking water. Is chlorinated water safe to use? Here comes the rubber stamp. Chlorinated water that meets the EPA standard is safe for drinking and other general household activities such as bathing, cooking, laundering, and cleaning. The water can also be used for gardening. The water is safe for plants and for watering lawns with no adverse effects. Well, we're going to take a little short jaunt. Now, I'll try to make it very brief here. Oh, then we see that really the problem that we seem to be dealing with is this haloacetic acid that currently that seems to be the problem child that the EPA God doesn't like. Oh, and then I love the artwork that was done here. I don't know how much it cost the taxpayers for this little card. I received 2 mailings of this. I don't know why. But, you know, it's showing crystal clear water flowing out of a tap over these shiny ice cubes. And this wonderful Mine Worst thing here. It's a totally local. Simply brilliant. Somebody's trying to brain bang somebody. Now, the next item I'm going to bring to your attention happens to be a little bit on the scientific edge. This one here comes from another website, www.stanford.edu/group Mitch Lab, on the subject of public health. Mitch Laboratory, our changing water supplies, the importance of nitrogen. And down in here, they basically, this whole particular web page here is about, while dissolved organic matter in pristine waters is dominated by carbon-based humic substances. I think that's our problem here, isn't it? Is somebody scientific here can say yes or no? Okay. Anyway, what the heart of their endorsement here is for this Dr. Michael Plewa of the University of Illinois. And Dr. Plewa is a genetic toxicologist, University of Illinois. And he spends most of his working activity, not in circles like this, but actually in a lab looking at numbers and doing measurements. And it is demonstrated that nitrogen-based byproducts are orders of magnitude more toxic than the carbon-based byproducts previously studied. Okay, well, that's Stanford University, Mitch Laboratory, that seems to be kind of saying this Dr. Plewa has some interesting things to say for those that care to hear. And this one here, this is just a couple of quotes from Dr. Plewa. We'll get a little bit deeper into this. Plewa, he says, a vastly big experiment. This whole aspect of dumping this stuff into water and playing God when you only know less than a small percentage of what the impact is. Every water source in every town in this country and in the world is different than the next. It's all different. For somebody to make generalized statements about some fix for the whole is insane, or as some would say, unsane. I don't want to sound glib, Plewa said in the interview with American Press, but we are participating in a vastly big experiment. Sometimes I wonder if we're maybe not on Easter Island and we're some fatal point in that whole migration. Dr. Plewa goes, this is one of his more scientific papers. This one here came from the web too, yes ma'am. And this one here, if you want the web address, I'll give it to you, but it's titled Toxic Byproducts Generated by Disinfected Drinking Water Contaminated with Pharmaceuticals. And this one here, he's narrowly looking at one of these byproducts is actually interacting with something that wasn't in the water source to begin with, but it happened to be what he was looking at here was actually a contaminant that was introduced via the medical people because they were using this material called ipamidol for X-ray imaging, and it basically stays in a person for the imaging part, and then it gets excreted into the water. And what it reacts with that in that water, if there's chloramine present, produces some really noxious stuff. Now remember this title. He actually looks at the genetic level of living things, not just humans, but all living things. And then here he basically underscores that this production is not anything the EPA knows about or wants to hear about. What's also interesting about this guy is that he actually has asked for money for more studies, and like in so many cases in here, He was denied. You tell me how scientific EPA or how other agenda these people are. And you're listening to the EPA as God. They're not. Neither is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Neither is the FDA. Here we get down to more Plewa stuff. With more stuff from the web. This particular little picture shows one of his determinations from this boring lab stuff is that in this case here, the particular stuff he's looking at actually gets in and destroys chromosomes. Now I've heard some people complain about, you know, bathing in it and cooking with it and drinking with it and breathing it. It seemed to me there's a trespass that's going on. That seemed to me almost like a matter of law, and it gets involved in here. Because like when something trespasses inside of me that I don't want there, it's trespassing. If you were firing a bullet at me, you'd be guilty of a crime. But because it happens to be some kind of a chemical substance that you want to endorse as being poured into the water because the EPA God says to do this, I happen to know that there's also scientifically some other ways to accomplish this problem. Somebody was mentioning here this evening about why not remove some of the plant particulates before it even enters in the damn water treatment system, so there's less of it to be processed. And there are methods to do that reasonably, without poisoning the fish, without killing the wild birds out there, without wiping out, giving people here in town strange diseases they don't know where the hell come from. You know, the EPA, you know, every time they get into a box, they just say, well, go talk to your doctor. Do you think your medical doctor understands any of this, or very much of it? Probably not. And that's what the EPA tells you a lot through their readings. Go read it. What I'm seeing from the city here is not a smart, intelligent thing. It sounds more like this insanity that seems to be gripping the world. Does anyone care? I do. I have more to say, but I think that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Lawrence?
Lynn Lawrence, 5716 South Tongass. I'm here tonight representing the Inner Island Ferry Authority. I'm the marketing manager for that organization. And I would like to share with you a new report that's just been completed for the IFA by the numbers. This report has been published or prepared by Scheinberg Associates, a community planning firm based in Juneau. And it gives you in detail the financial status of the Inner Island Ferry Authority and the plans for the future of the IFA. IFA by the numbers 2014. Each year, the IFA ferries 52,000 people and 12,000 vehicles between Ketchikan and Prince of Wales Island. Visitors made 5,740 ferry trips last year, spending $5.8 million in Prince of Wales on lodging, fuel, food, vehicle rental, etc. Hundreds of Prince of Wales Island jobs are dependent on the IFA, primarily in the seafood industry. Last year, 3 million pounds of fresh and live seafood with an ex-vessel value of $15 million was shipped on the IFA. This harvest is taxed by the state, generating hundreds of thousands of dollars for local and state coffers annually. Also, students from 13 school districts made 3,700 trips on the IFA last year, saving schools $307,000 over the cost of flying. Medical trips accounted for up to 4,500 ferry trips last year. These medical tourists spend millions in at Ketchikan medical facilities. The IFA originally, when it started in 2002, the business plan was that the IFA would be able to sustain itself operational cost-wise from the fare box, and that worked successfully for about 2 years. But then the increasing cost of fuel and all other expenses outstripped the resources of the IFA and resulted in the need for a subsidy for the operations. Incidentally, it appears that almost all public transit systems or public ferries in the country need to operate with some type of subsidy. It's very rare that they can cover their own costs with revenues. If you turn to page 6 on this report, there's a table showing the passenger vehicle ferry systems fare box recovery rate for fiscal year 2010. And that shows that the BC ferries, for example, had a fare box recovery rate of 69%. The Washington State ferries, 65%. And Alaska Marine Highway, 26%. And the Inter-Island Ferry Authority, 77%. So the IFA, from an efficiency point of view, is doing very well. The big challenge that the IFA is facing is the difference between the revenue generated and the operating costs. And the governor has agreed with the IFA's request for a $500,000 appropriation for each of the next 5 years. That still has to pass the hurdle of the legislature. It's still in place as of today. And it would be also, if you turn to page 9 in this report, you see the impact of the IFA on Ketchikan. And the IFA in 2013 resulted in spending direct from the IFA for fuel, shipyards, fees, charges, and groceries of $11 million. And that's including estimate of IFA ridership spending for groceries, clothing, hardware, building materials, automotive, restaurants, etc. Spending by IFA riders on healthcare in Ketchikan is not documented because we did not have access to those numbers. The number of Ketchikan residents who hunt deer or bear on Prince of Wales Island, there were 670 people in 2013. Clearly, the IFA is good for Prince of Wales Island, but it also is very good for the Ketchikan economy. I'm not here asking for anything from the city tonight. We just wanted to present this report and make our information public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. You have any questions?
Just a comment. Thanks, Lynn. And I saw this report last week at the Southeast Conference meeting, and I think everybody knows how important this ferry is to Ketchikan and the POW. So I'd like to ask for 4 hands to do 2 things. It's not going to cost us a dime. And one would be to send a letter from the mayor to the Senate Finance asking them to keep the $500,000 or that we endorse the $500,000 for the Inter-Island Ferry. And second is to have the manager inform Ray our lobbyist, if you ask him if he would keep track of where this is going, so that we have a feeling for it. So I just asked four hands to do that very simple thing.
Madam, is that's the appropriate way to do this? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Are there any questions for her? Oh, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate the support.
Holly Churchill? Did she leave? Okay. Thank you. Thomas Belenich?
Is this somebody's?
It's for the radio station. She's recording the
Oh, okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. Vice Mayor, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Thomas Belenich. I reside at 235 Forest Park Drive and longtime resident of Revillagigedo Island. I believe being a good steward of this island is very important. I come here tonight about the water and also about a little bit about the IFA, I guess, but I'll start out with the chloramization. Half of you remember me that I came to you about a year and a half, 2 years ago about this issue because you started publicizing it in the newspaper. And I presented you numerous amounts of information, of scientific facts about this is not a good idea. I asked Mr. Mayor Lou Williams at the time, how did you come to the conclusion? And he said, we had 5 projects, this was the middle one. So it was all about finances. I'm upset this evening that you're putting our health care ahead of money. You say you have grandchildren, family, so do I. I came to you, Marty, and you asked me a question back then about the blue baby syndrome and how devastating this is. It's true. It states in the newspaper that the newspaper gentleman that interviewed the professionals, and he talks about the primary, it's the 4th paragraph, last. On the weekend edition of March 8th and 9th. And he quotes this paragraph, the primary problem with chloramization, Poland said, was that it can lead to a process called, I'm not a scientist, I can't even pronounce this, but it's basically, which in turn can lead to negative health effects, such as, and it's an even bigger word, also referred to as blue baby syndrome. I gave you this information 2.5, 3 years ago. I'd like for you to see this information from a professional that states there is a fact. Now I'm upset because my grandchildren live here in the city limits. I have a 7-week-old grandson and a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. And I've been carefully trying to educate my daughter about this stuff, because damn if you guys are going to harm my kids. All right? And I also told you when you put your plant in, you put it right next to a Head Start school, and if you're going to operate it, that you should be considering maybe replacing another location for the Head Start school. I worked at the pulp mill for years, and we have had numerous chemical spills where the troopers would be running out North Tongass, knocking on doors 2 o'clock in the morning and say, evacuate. There's a chemical spill. For at least 2.5 hours, go to town, just go out north. You can't even use the Tongass Highway. I mean, I don't know how many people here remember that. It happens. It's called human error and mechanical problems. There's nothing perfect about any of this mechanical stuff. You have a wash, you have a scrubbing system up there that's supposed to help out in case there is a spill. I applaud you for that, but there's no guarantee. That Head Start school is in spitting distance of your plant. I'm here for them. I'm here for the ones that can't speak for themselves. I'm here for the children of our island. Ketchikan is a very unique city compared to any other city in the United States of America. We live above a water line. High tide is right below us most of the time. This system is 90 years old. This chloramization system that you talk about, how great it is, everybody's using it for 90 years across the United States. Where were we with our technology 90 years ago? There's something better out there. Something definitely is better out there than this. And I'd be willing to help pay for it whichever way it needs to be done. Raise my property tax, that's what I say. Let me go talk to my borough assembly members and let them help out. That's what I say. That's what I will do to help. 90 years, very old process. And now they're coming out with these health care problems in the last 10 years. You talk about this firm, CHM2 Hill. It's global. It's huge. They're awesome. They're the professionals. 2 weeks ago, the world's largest law firm was indicted for lying and profiteering and was brought in the United States for lying and profiteering. I'm telling you, global entities are all not all that great. I believe this firm is giving you the bare necessities to make it work. And 7 years later, once you get this going, they're going to come and say, oh, we need to upgrade. And now we're going to have to spend more money. 5 years after that, they're going to say, okay, you don't meet the bare necessities, we need to upgrade again. Give me some more of your money. I'll give you a better plan. Add on to it. Pyramid power. This is how I believe big corporations in the world work today. Now, this article that came out today, Mr. Dawson said that as long as KPU follows EPA recommendations regarding, another big word, they don't need to pose any short or long-term health issues based on significant and experimental health studies as noted during regulatory determinations. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. He also states in here that this can cause NDMA. Okay, it can, and oh, well, that's not too bad. I mean, you could get it in your hot dogs, you get it in your bacon, you get it in all your smoked meat, you get it anyways, no matter what. A lot of us choose not to eat that food. A lot of us that have good jobs, that can buy organic food, choose to, or raise chickens and have organic food ready for us. In the last sentence in today's article, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs up, the last sentence states that the regulatory species so that true toxins to humans still remains unknown. Nobody knows. It's still happening. I just can't emphasize enough to you folks, again, 2.5 years down the road, that this is a bad idea. It just won't work for us. I mean, number 3, another thing I want to talk about is the city is not plumb for it. I have a friend that works on the Alaska Marine Highway that just lost his job in California because they're bankrupt, and he ran their chloramization station, chemist, water treatment plant for 13 years. And he is not here tonight to tell you his expertise about your plumbing. Your plumbing, you need a round loop. You need it to be going around consistently. Any one time you have a dead end, like at Crick Street, we talked about that 3 months ago, that your chloramization will be building up in those dead zones. And then so we put bleeders all over our water system in the city so we don't freeze up, and you're not dechlorinating your water or taking the chloramines out before you dump it into the creeks and the rivers in the Tongass Narrows. Now, you've been good stewards, the city manager and the Department of Water, and you ran it for quite some time, that you guys dechloramized or took out the chlorine before you dumped it in the wastewater plant or whatever it was. The way your system is set up now, there's no way that you could do it. There's just no way. You're also supposed to have a testing station for every zone of your city. Where your city's being used a lot of water, parts of the city where they're not using so much water, and part of the city that's dead. Meaning like they close their shops and they left and no water's running through there at all. And you're supposed to be checking that once or twice a week to see what the levels are. There is a chance that this chloramine doesn't dissipate, it builds up. You don't have backflow valves to keep stuff from back and flowing in. You're just, from my understanding, just the way this gentleman was explaining to me, there's no way that you're, in watching the last 4 or 5 city council meetings about freezing up in water, that you're just not set up for it. So, is there anybody from the water department here today? Is John Killinger here, or any of the other gentlemen that work there? You do? Do you guys have a system set up to where you got stations set up to go test? How many system test stations do you have? And you test daily. Is there one out there by?
The audience can't hear. The television audience can't hear.
Oh.
So maybe we can have him answer that question.
Oh, sure.
Here.
Come on up.
If you would, please. Dave?
David Johnson, foreman of the Water Division. We do have 8 stations that we test daily. We also have online devices that test all the time, especially at our plants where it comes out of our contact time tank now, and also some places out in the field. So we will be checking all the zones, usually at the end, where, as of right now, using free chlorine will dissipate. So we check at the end of the zones to make sure that we still have a residual by what the state recommends.
So do you have dead zones?
We have dead end zones that we do flush.
I guess dead end zones that you flush. Do you de-chlorinate before you flush?
Well, we dechlorinate while we flush.
Mr. Amler?
Vice Mayor West, with all due respect, this is the opportunity for citizens to
You're right.
address the council.
Okay.
I really don't want my staff engaging in a back and forth debate or discussion.
Point well taken. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Maybe later.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and I apologize for that. I just wanted
No,
to...
it was my fault. I just wanted to answer that question and
Okay.
not let it just hang there.
So, my concern is that you have bleeders, and the bleeders are not, it's just free water running. You have it at all the dock sites. You have it at all the terminals, ferry terminals. I just don't know how you could keep from not adding all this to the environment. I mean, it's a very bad idea. It was a bad idea. I asked you folks, I gave you all the information I had, and I asked you really to reconsider. And I do remember that we were supposed to have meetings and hearings and discussions about it. I remember getting a flyer, and then I remember getting a second flyer that it'll be down the road sometime. And I don't remember ever hearing about it again since then. And I think that it needs to be publicized for the public. They come and set their concerns and get educated. I think you need to use all the media that there's out there, the newspapers, the radio stations, the letters to the homes of the city, and I think it's the proper thing to do. I believe that they weren't properly informed about any type of meetings or education scenarios that were allowed, and I think that you need to postpone this until you've had a chance to educate the public. And I, for one, I don't know. This is not. It's just a really bad idea. It really is. As a longtime membership of this island, I can't believe that we're going to go this route. I really can't. And the pulp mill had a real good system. Saxman has a real good system. Alan Shirley White's got an excellent system, and they have to all do that because the regulation is made them to do so, and none of their systems are set up like this. You're going to be the first system, the second system, but the first one to do it as a secondary disinfectant, and I think it's a bad idea. I think you need to readjust everything and take a serious look at everything one more time. I'm just concerned for the babies of the city that can't talk or speak or know what's going to happen to them in the future. And like I said, if you need help, I've worked with federal government as a maritime employer, and I know as long as you keep them in queue, they'll allow you extensions and time to think about it and make it right.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Thank you, folks.
That's everyone that's signed up. Is there anyone else that wants to speak this evening? We'll take a recess. Thank you.
Careful with that hammer.
The system is going to remain on, just so you know. People,
Okay.
it's going to remain on for the next month.
Thank you. The system's going to stay on.
Don't drink my water. We did now.
I gotta go get
Seattle, Gravity State.
You can hear them online. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm aware. Right. Yeah.
Dick's fault. It's Dick's fault.
Yeah, they gotta remove the chlorine and they gotta. Yeah, you can't, because it comes in contact with, you can't have chlorine. Right, you gotta screen. We have to change it.
How many people in the house, on the houses are there in the city? You know? I'm curious about, are you guys just using handheads or are you using the platform?
No, it comes in a tote and we make this.
No, it comes in a totes and gases.
We gotta wait for the gas chlorine too.
And
Stuff. I think it was similar. I can't remember actually what the newspaper article even said. I wonder if maybe you should have used kind of the podium to clarify that when it comes up. Yeah.
Now, see, that's a variable, depending on where you know, they have to super chlorine on that end of the town in order to get it fermented. So the person closest to the plant is probably getting higher than the person because it's hard to regulate. Yeah, it's hard to regulate. Yeah. So, and then you got the larger tank system that goes in.
so does water end up going to the holding tank before it goes into distribution for everybody?
Yeah, that's correct.
I got you.
The storage factor is also made so that if we were to lose a siphon from the dam or something, we have a million gallons sitting in our tank that we can right there. Have one at the top of Jefferson, have one at the top of Jackson.
first? I'll shoot. So I think what we have here is a good partnership between the various interested entities. The hospital has agreed to provide a building which Aquila, with support from the city, from Aquila itself, from the hospital, is going to remodel and renovate into Carr House. And I think to a new Carr House, a new inpatient drug and alcohol treatment center. I think the building is zoned appropriately. It's a repurpose of a building that certainly could use some rehab. And it's going to work for Aquila. And more importantly, it's going to work for the folks in our community that need assistance.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is that the hospital stands by its commitment to provide Aquila the building, free and clear, and $100,000. And all we're waiting for is agreement that Aquila will, in fact, remain in this community and provide that care to these residents as a result of the transfer of the building and the $100,000. Obviously, Aquila also needs support from the City Council, and that's what I'm hoping we're going to find tonight, is that we have agreement all around on, and we can move forward with relocating all the existing services in those buildings that I have in there, and the transfer of the property.
Correct. Yes, for Carr House. if an individual is, if the individual has insurance that we can bill, or if they have Medicaid, we have to. We can't sort of pick and choose. And we also bill folks that don't have means, private pay as well. But correct. There was, and just to sort of add on to what the city manager said, at this point we don't own the other buildings. So the agreement, we don't own the other buildings. Those have not been transferred to Aquila. And we do, and we do not make money on that service. We subsidize that service about half of the cost. So we lose money on that service. We subsidize it through our other programs, right? So in that service area in the state of Alaska, that is normal. It's not, because of the nature of the client and their ability to pay, it's very difficult to make money. Correct. Yes, in some cases, that's a minority. Generally, I would say, at least at Car House, it's about 20%. No, it's okay. Sure. And the other thing, just to add, is when the city approached Aquila, I believe, and staff can correct me, was losing in excess of $1 million a year. And Aquila did have a plan and has successfully, brought the program around to the point where we are now self-sufficient in those 3 years. And we're coming to the, into a new year, and our hope is that we'll be able to be more successful going forward. So. This plan as presented will require us to find additional funds. For Car House, it's about half of our operating revenue, roughly $254,000 a year.
if I could just comment on that, and I don't know if this will help or not, but we used to provide. Oh, okay. Yeah, we used to provide certainly not long-term chemical dependency support, but we used to provide that service, and it required a subsidy from us. We could not figure out a way to make that, break even or whatnot. So again, being a good community partner, the city has supported this big project, and Car House being displaced. We felt it incumbent on us to participate in whatever solution this is, and it's not ideal for Aquila. So it's a compromise all around, I think, because I couldn't really go any farther than what I did either. This is going to also create, pain for us as well. Yeah. No, best offer. Yeah. Yeah. So. So this is a challenging area as far as funding and as far as making a break even. The city knows that. They had that experience where it was requiring pretty significant subsidies. And to Aquila's credit, they certainly narrowed that gap. And again, we've all said this, and I'll reiterate it again. We need that service in this community, and absent Aquila, I don't think it would be.
Our intent, right now we operate at 12 beds. Our intent is to move to 16 beds. And that will realize the scale of efficiency. We won't have to add staff to do that necessarily to serve more clients. The one thing that is nice about the Washington Street building, although it is a challenge architecturally, it has more space. It is in total 7,000 square feet. Car House right now is 4,000. As a practical matter, it really only has about 5,000 or 5,500 that we can use for a Car House type service. And as we indicated in our report to you, it's going to require significant investment to make it appropriate for that use. Is that for me or for Mr. Hamlin? I think that has not been discussed with city staff at this point.
Yeah, Frank Scheer, Fire Chief. We're going to do this the same way we bought the ambulance, which we're actually going down to pick up on the 31st. It's through HGAC BUY, that's the Houston, Galveston Council Area Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. So they go out and they do bids with a 2-year contract, and they have published, unpublished options. They allow everybody to come in. It's a big public process. They've been around about 30 years. They meet all of the advertising and bid requirements that we have, the state has, that the federal government has. There's a lot of communities using them, and through their purchasing power, because they know when these companies know when they're bidding that HGAC is going to be selling numerous trucks under this bid. They really sharpen their pencil. We could never come close to this number if we went out and just tried to do this on our own. So we actually belong to HGAC. We had Bob review everything from finance. So there's an application process. You have to sign up with him. He reviews the procurement process and makes sure that it meets our city procurement process. So once they go out for that bid, they publish all these with all the options, and then you sit down with the manufacturer. You go through, you look at the one that really meets your requirements, and sit down, you go through the process, you add the options that have been bid, and that's how you come up with the truck. So they've done all the specifications, they've held all the meetings, had their engineers look at it, and really taken the cost and the burden off of the other communities that belong to this to have to do that every single time. So those are all the soft costs that you don't see when you're going out for a regular RFP. And it's becoming real commonplace. I can give you an example, just in the state of Alaska, the city of Tok, Soldotna, city and borough of Juneau, city and borough of Wrangell, us already, city of Seward, Kenai Peninsula Borough, Steve's Volunteer Fire Department up in Fairbanks, and Sitka have all used HGAC up here to purchase their apparatus. That's how good it is. So it's becoming pretty much the norm anymore. And what we did is we set up a committee. We had Dennis Spurgeon on the committee from City Shop. So we want to make sure mechanically that we're getting what we need when we sit down and go through those options. Then we had one of our captains sit on the committee, a couple of the firefighters sit on the committee, and those guys worked through with the manufacturer rep and came up with the options to make sure that it's going to meet all of our requirements up here.
Exterior
Hi, Matt Brown, Senior Engineering Technician. Basically, you're referring to the bridging, the additional bridging at the windowsills, which it takes the place of like a conventional header. So it's just strengthening the window strengthening the siding above and around the windows. So it's additional engineering, as recommended by the engineer from this system versus the previous system.
Thank you, Acting Mayor West. My name is Floyd Dameron. My name is Floyd Dameron. I've spoken to the council multiple times. Most of you. The question, if I understand correctly, was, is the system backwards? Is that the question? In some systems, when UV disinfection is applied, UV disinfection sometimes comes first, chlorination follows, and ammonia is added to form chlorines. We're doing the same exact thing here. The way the system is configured is right out of the tunnel right now is where chlorine is added. You make your own chlorine, you take salt and electricity, and you make your own sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach. And so rather than spending several million more dollars of moving that whole system around, we adapted the UV disinfection system to place it between the red chlorine and the chlorine contact reservoir. And this isn't the only community that does that. The reason that you need free chlorine is UV disinfection does not take care of viruses, and the law requires you to remove 99.99% of viruses, which viruses hasn't been discussed in any of the meetings that I've been to. The free chlorine takes care of viruses, the UV takes care of Giardia and Cryptosporidia, and then ammonia is added to stop the formation. It doesn't hide disinfection byproducts, it doesn't cover them up, it actually prevents the formation of the byproducts. And so we're timing the addition of ammonia so that the byproduct level will be below the federal requirements. And the main problem here is halosetics. We've heard the numbers as high as 140 or so. Legal limit is 60 parts per billion. This is long-term exposure carcinogenic. So I hope I'm answering your question. I don't know that I would say it's normal, but I would also say it's not unusual. But the preference is you use UV disinfection first. That would be the preference. It would cost several million more dollars to do that in patient homes, so we incorporated the system within the existing system that we have. The outcome is essentially the same. If I understand the question correctly, if you build a filter plant with a chlorination potentially still be required? Is that the question? Almost all of the communities that you've heard about that chlorinate now, those communities have filter plants. And the challenge is that the dissolved organics oftentimes will flow right through a filter plant. One way to resolve that is to add the last step under the filter plant called polishing step. You need to put an activated carbon process at the end of the filtration process to reduce the need or eliminate the need for chlorination. That may add another $5 to $10 million construction cost to the project. The reason you don't put granular activated carbon on a non-filtered source is covered by Mr. Collins, when he was here at the last meeting, is that would plug out your algae, pine needles, turbidity, and other items. And so because of the plugging nature of the raw water that's not filtered and the cold temperature of the water, activated carbon by itself would not be effective. So I hope I'm answering the question.
So, let's say someone traveled and they were successful. How long does it take? How long does it take to put a filtration plant? When do you have to do some tests? How is the scope of that?
Councilman Mazzini, most likely the proper approach would be to run pilot studies to make sure that the correct filtration process is being selected, the right filtration rate is being selected, and then understand how much backwash water, because when you filter the water, you end up with a waste product. And you have a waste product that has to be disposed of. The filter plant uses chemicals, which most people don't know. So people say, I don't want chemicals in my water. So you do the pilot studies, then you do pre-design, you talk to vendors about the type of equipment, and you said to disregard funding, so I'll disregard the funding element part. I would say to do the pilot study, pre-design, construction, commissioning, startup, operator training. That's about a 5-year process.
So it would take 5 years before we would be,
Well, again, you said ignore the funding element of it, but the reality is I've just spoken to DEC, and the grants program is going down. There's less money for the grants program now than there was 10 years ago. And a project of this size would use 100% of the state's grants, and that's not going to happen.
I didn't, when I said, I was looking for the time frame, so I don't really need recommendations. I just wanted to know how long it would take from start to finish for us to operation.
Probably start to finish is probably a minimum of 10 years. You got bond issue, there's funding to take care of. Very, very lengthy process. If funding is taken away and the money was available, it's about a 5-year process. Multiple projects, and I worked for this particular company the last 35 years. I'm an engineer. I'm from Severson, so I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical doctor. From an engineering standpoint, it's technologically quite easy to do. It's just putting in a small amount of ammonia very precisely. We know how to do that. I'm very confident that we can form a monitoring, which is the right forming of the training staff here at KPU. And the research that we've done is appropriate for Ketchikan with the budget we have. Funds were unlimited, and we said we wanted a corporate account limited. I'm answering your question.
What about showers?
Again, I'm an engineer. I can tell you what I've read, and on my chair there's two 2012 reports that have Vermont Department of Health, October 2012, did a very extensive study on many, many systems. And their conclusion is that the Vermont Department of Health has determined that the use of monochlorine for water disinfection is not likely to result in adverse health effects. On the contrary, the health department believes that the use of monochlorine will reduce the concentration of regulated and possibly unregulated disinfection byproducts in drinking water. This reduction may contribute to fewer adverse health effects compared to drinking water treated with free chlorine as a disinfectant. Other citations circle that. But this is very recent, 2012, very comprehensive study that actually suggests the health effects will be less.
Another comment. What about
Civil War area in Washington, D.C., the service lines were made out of pure wet, literally pure wet draw, because it was easy to draw tubing using pure lead. And someone mentioned 16 new homes that had those lines replaced. Those are pure lead service lines with most lead service lines here. Ketchikan's untreated water is highly corrosive. It's rainwater. It's highly corrosive, and so KPU adds soda ash to bring the pH up to reduce the corrosivity of the water. And we believe from our studies and bench studies that you will still be in compliance with the lead and copper rule after you add chlorination oil. Councilmember Citizen, what a lot of people don't realize is that waste products from humans, particularly urine, creates chloramines and adds ammonia to the water. Just take a diaper towel and throw diapers in there right every day, and you'll smell ammonia. The amount of ammonia in wastewater is approximately 50 to 100 times greater than the amount of ammonia that will come in from chlorinated water. So it would be a very negligible impact compared to the amount of ammonia that's already in the wastewater. The most common means of removing chloramines from the water would be a filter system that has an activated carbon filter, a reverse osmosis membrane, and that would be delivered to the house. It's called a water supply store in Anchorage, and they said you can get a point of use unit that you can put right at your sink if you use your own drinking water. For cooking water, that's about a $300 item. And the salesman mentioned to me that they have a whole house unit, depending on the size of the house and the number of residents, that's between about $1,000 and $2,000 to treat the entire house. And then, of course, those elements have to be replaced depending on the amount of water that's used every 6 months to a year. These are fairly commonly available in commercial units that are certified suitable for drinking water. Councilmember Citizen, there's two types of filters. One filter for chlorine, one for chloramine. So manufacturers have both those filters. It's commonly done in San Francisco, Minneapolis, St. Louis. And you just make sure you have the right filter in the dialysis unit, and you'll be just fine. And furthermore, people that are on dialysis, if that's the only medical problem they have, perfectly fine to drink chlorinated water. Councilmember Paulson, that's exactly correct. It just takes dollars. If after this whole system is done, we just go into your system, and the peak usage might be as much as, over 10 million gallons per day. If you wanted to design a system for that, you could put on an activated carbon, and you could put on your membranes and all that. But very large land area, lots of electricity, you'd have to then take all the water and pump it. There's not enough air to drive the water through the home, the water coming into the home, let's say the home has 40 pounds of pressure, and if it drops 5 psi instead of 35 pounds, that's fine for a shower, it's fine for your wash machine, fine for your dishwasher, but Ketchikan is a very long linear system, and with a significant head loss on the existing system, the water would have to be pumped, and it's very, very